Hello and welcome to the King Heroes Journey podcast. My name is Beth Martins, and today I'm super happy to host Adam Bigelsen that I had a real pleasure to meet and have breakfast with at Anarchapulco recently. So without further ado, maybe I will just make a few announcements if you don't mind, Adam. I know you're there in the waiting room. And I'm just going to shout out to my son who does the intro and extra music for the podcast. So that's my son, Liam Martins. Guitars, Guns, and Knives, I believe is what he covers at his channel. So feel free to check that out and come say hello in the chat. The King Heroes Journey podcast, if you happen to be new to it, is where I host people who are not afraid of the truth. And boy, everybody puts their hand up pretty quick about that one. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, there seems to be a limit. And I'm going to bring Adam on to begin talking about that right now. Hello, Adam. Welcome.
Hola, Beth. Good to see you.
How are you?
Excellent, excellent. I got to say real quick, I got guitars. You got guitars. It's pretty cool.
There you go. What about knives and guns?
I have some knives, no guns.
There you go. There you go. And so you're in Central Time. I shouldn't just blurt out your location, but do you want to tell people where you spent your life?
Yeah. I'm Lake Chapala area. It's about 30 minutes from Guadalajara in Mexico. So I'm in central Mexico area at this point.
Nice, nice. And that's because of your sweetie. I don't know exactly what to call her. She's a beautiful, beautiful soul.
Yes, Ana Maria Oliva, my awesome in-house scientist.
There you go. There you go. Nice. Yeah, I need one of those myself.
We all do.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're not familiar with the work of Adam Bigelsen, he is the co-creator. Now, did your dad create that academy originally? And
we did it with him. You know, Dad, he was just doing his thing, and there was a point where we started to create some things around him.
Right, so beautiful. Yeah. Could you do me a favor and take 1 minute to introduce yourself properly? And I have to get the door 1 second, please.
Sure. All right, you got it.
Okay, let me just make you big there.
Sure. So Adam Bigelsen, and we can talk all about Beth while she's not here. Yay. There we go. Cool. So yes, for those of you guys that don't know me, my name is Adam Bigelsen, the son of Dr. Harvey Bigelsen. If you don't know who my father was, you should look him up. He did some pretty amazing things as far as we don't like to call alternative health. You know, he wrote an article at one point that said, "Don't call me alternative," because psychologically that means we're secondary. And we don't believe there is an alternative to the way nature works. So my father originally was an eye surgeon. He was a Vietnam trauma surgeon. Eventually he became a homeopath in the 80s, Arizona area. And Arizona was the first state that had a law that separated the American Holistic Medical Association from the American Medical Association. And my father co-authored that law. So he helped legitimize alternative medicine in the United States. He made sure that the homeopaths had anatomy background, because up to that point in time, it was like the Wild West and people could do whatever they want and call themselves homeopaths. So he did that. He was a founding member of that American Holistic Medical Association, and they gave out the first homeopathic medical licenses in the United States. So Dad did some really interesting things. If you look him up too, you'll see him on Coast to Coast with George Norrie. You'll see him on Guy MTV. I think there's 5 episodes there on him. He was on Dateline in the 90s. So he did some pretty amazing things. He wrote some awesome books. The book Doctors Are More Harmful Than Germs did not make him a lot of friends in the medical world. Let's see, Doctors Are More Harmful Than Germs. He wrote the book. He did quite a bit with curing cancer for a long time. Worked in Mexico, which was awesome. He was brought up on charges of curing someone illegally. So as far as, you know, what the American Medical Association thinks, and is they're looking out for our best interest or not. When he was brought up on charging a person, he was charged with curing the person by illegal means. And the head of the medical board said to my father, "We do not care that your patient got better. We only care about what you did." So I know they're not interested in your health. So he lived an interesting life, my dad. And my brother and I are here to continue his work. So that's the nutshell of it.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I just have to comment on that. Curing somebody illegally reminds me of Jesus, right? Like, oh, you shouldn't have made that man whole.
Yeah. It's amazing to me. It's disease management. and it is what it is. So when you see where you stand, then you start to do things to take charge of your own healthcare, which is what we teach people to do. We educate, empower people so they can learn to take charge of their healthcare.
Beautiful. That's amazing. And so what was that turning point for you when you decided to carry on your father's work, or were you already involved while he was alive? How did that happen?
That's a good question, and I appreciate you having me on. As much as Josh and I do so many things together, it's nice every once in a while to have my own voice in the midst of this. So for me, I grew up as a musician. I was an elementary school teacher, and I used music to teach kids, which was awesome and fun. At one point, my dad said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I don't know. He said, do you want to be a doctor? I said, no. He said, good, because I would not let you do that. So he said, whatever you do not follow in my shoes. It's happening. But something happened at one point. I grew up in this world, and I grew up with the terrain. I didn't get sick for a lot of my life. I felt like a little bit of an alien with the conversations we have with people. But as time went on, my life of music was awesome. I taught music at a college. I taught some rock stars' kids. Some of my heroes, I taught their kids, which was awesome. And at one point, I read a book, The Song of the Spine. And there was two, The Song of the Spine, Cosmic Octave. And they were talking about music in terms that I know. They were talking about the health with terms that I know. They were actually talking about people my dad knew. So with these little books, my two worlds came together. And it was cool. I was going to San Francisco that next weekend for a concert. I found out about the Accutonics tuning forks, yay, the tuning fork treatment stuff. And they were doing a training that weekend. So I went and did the training, and my world of music and health came together at that point. So, my dad, Josh worked with my dad side by side in the clinic for years. I was about an hour away in Lake Tahoe, just snowboarding and teaching music and loving my whole life experience. But eventually something went on where business-wise, I got involved with the clinic. I started to do a little bit of the sound therapy. And then when the clinic got shut down the last time, our clinics have been shut down repeatedly for different things, curing people without, illegally. Clinic got shut down, and that's when I kicked things into high gear and set up the academy. We did the private association experience, where we set up some things to really just consult with people. And that's when I got involved. So family business is fun. F is for family, right? So working with family has been very interesting to say the least. But my job at that point my mission was to make sure that this work did not die with my father. And that's where we're at this point. So it was a little bit of a slow progression. And then one day it all changed.
So I share that experience of having worked with my family, and I was the only one of the children that chose that because, it's very classic where you don't want to do what your parents do, right? That you actively choose not to do that. And I easily was going down that road, but there came a point where some things were more important to me that I wanted to do in the world that I knew I couldn't do just being a hippie. And then I also wanted to be accepted by society. So I thought, oh, this is a perfect fit. My family's going to like me. Society will like me. And nothing can go wrong, right?
Right.
And so that's a whole other story I tell a lot. And it's written in my book, how I survived the cancer that, it caused, although that's a very way too oversimplified causation statement, speaking to a scientist here. And
Sure.
But I just want to, for a few minutes, talk about what it really is like to work with family.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is something more natural overall about that families, live together and stay together and then work together seems to be part of, I don't know, a more natural way rather than us all going our separate ways. But it's mixed, right? There's all kinds of things that come up. So I'm curious what your experience has been, how you've had to maybe work through things with your father, with your brother, and even in your father's passing, that can also heavily influence the way that you work on, his project, which is now yours and your brother's project. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I love my family. I have a very unique family. We're very close, and growing up, I didn't see a lot of my friends having the same experience. So I love my family. They were very supportive of all that I do in general, which was great. I was 8 years old, 7 years old. I had long hair. I was afraid to get my hair cut as a kid. So what my parents do, they took me to see Kiss, right? And then it was okay for me to have long hair. I wasn't so strange anymore, right? But my family was very supportive. They were a little out of the box, definitely. My dad he was pretty conservative in general. He was I can never remember, left brain, right brain. He's the numbers guy, all right? So he's not into the wooey wooey at all. And then my mom, her dream was to be a hippie, but she wasn't allowed to do that when she was younger. So as we grew up with the family, I saw dad as the rich eye surgeon, and we were living in Princeton, New Jersey. He was doing very well. He had everything he had ever wanted. As a kid, we had the Porsche and the Jaguar, and we didn't have art on the walls. We had artists paint on our walls. So we had stuff. And my dad was near suicidal. He said he'd had everything he'd ever wanted. He'd achieved this American dream, and it wasn't what he wanted. So I watched him. I saw him as I was younger. We moved to Arizona when I was 8 years old. And before that, oh, the junk food was awesome. Dad was kind of fat, and making pies, and we would have all this junk food delivered to the house. And then all of a sudden things changed. He found out about Edgar Casey. He went to Arizona, started doing things there, and we all picked up shop and moved. And then it became the health food experience. So I went from Captain Crunch to Grape Nuts, which was not fun. I always tell people carob is a bad lie you tell children. It is not chocolate. But watching my dad was interesting. As a child, dad would come home when we were in Arizona so excited about his work. We did this. I had a patient that came in with this, and we did this, and this happened. It was really neat to see him enjoying what he was doing. So that had an effect on me. I thought that this is what we do. We have jobs that we love. We find a career that we really enjoy. And time goes on. My brother and sister and I were about 4 years apart. Josh is younger than I am. My sister Lila is the youngest. Josh at one point went to massage school and started doing that. Myself as the musician, I went off to college. I did some psychology work as an undergraduate. I did studies on the effects of music and stress and learning, which was awesome. And still parents supporting me as far as do what you want to do. Josh at one point after massage school started working with dad in the clinic. And it just kind of happened to Josh. It's not that this is what he wanted to do. For me, I was making a living as a guitar teacher, which was awesome, teaching at a college. And I had achieved a dream of mine. And then as I saw what was going on with the clinic and all this stuff, I started to want to get involved. And this is so funny because you know how family is. I'm the oldest. And they're like, yeah, good. That's great, Adam. Just go play your guitar. We're doing all this scar therapy and we're injecting people and you got to be a doctor. And his dad's giving up his license and things. I'm trying to find ways to work with scars and vibration and frequency can help with some scars. And you like this, Beth. I said this to my brother. I said scars and, tuning forks and the same thing. They're like, oh, yeah, that's cute. About a year later, Josh goes and takes the tuning fork course. He's like, oh, scars and tuning forks. So I had the family that they listened to me, but they actually heard me about a year later type of thing, So it was fun. It was frustrating. My brother and I at this point in time were best friends, which I'm grateful for. But what happened with our family was interesting. Dad would say whatever he wanted to say, whenever he wanted to say it. All right. No filter. And he was on with George Norrie at one point in time, the radio show, 4 million listeners. And I was sitting next to Dad, coaching him. Mom and Josh in the room texting me, tell him not to say this. Don't say that. And I would put up the little cue card and say, don't say this. And he would look at it and he would say it. Right. This is my dad. So my dad would say whatever. My brother, who actually got attacked with my father, was brought up on charges of practicing medicine without a license, who doesn't want to say anything, and me in the middle. So this is another reason I appreciate you having me on. I get to say some of what I want to say. I'll tell you that, TMJ, when the jaw kind of locks and clicks, I get that from my family because they don't want me to say things, So it's been a fun dynamic, to say the least.
Oh, well, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. It's just so nice because you can't see into anybody's life if they don't share about it. And so, yeah, it makes us closer, I think, personally.
Definitely.
Yeah, someone said they were hearing about my health journey, that I did an interview, or I was interviewed on Garrett Smith's channel, who I'm introducing you to, and then they messaged me after and said, "Oh, I really liked hearing all of that stuff that you've been through and you're going through, because it makes you more real." And it was actually hard in a way, because I was like, did I seem unreal before to you? Like, there's something fake and gay going on here. But anyway, that's, just you take the chance to expose yourself, and sometimes people do run after you, and then they act more like your friend, and that's okay, or more like they know you so much. And
Right.
it's a double-edged in that. I just wanted to quickly say, sorry to interrupt, but I am not seeing comments on this stream, and I've been poking around trying to figure out. I'm sure, Benjamin Balderson just said, yeah, Bess just said fake and gay. All right, well, finally we have I might be missing comments. It's telling me that until I do something on Facebook, it's not going to work. But at least I can see Ben's comments. That's fun. So, and here come a few more. Mary Benyon, nice to see you. Glad you're catching this live. Good. I'm glad. I thought the comments just weren't working, because by now we would definitely have heard from someone. So definitely reach out if you're there. The X comments should show up. Rumble would show up here. Fakebook, it's all set properly, so I don't know exactly what's going on, but I'm not ignoring anyone, just so you guys know. All right, Adam, were you going to say something, or would you like me to ask you a question?
I was going to say, oh yes, it's, I have a problem with being genuine. I have to be who I am. And it's an interesting thing. I had someone connect me with a coach once, and just because of what was going on, I wasn't necessarily looking for one, but we could all use some support for sure. We could all use a personal cheerleader. So I said to him, he said, "What do you want to do? How can I help you?" I said, I want to stop questioning myself. And he said, "Okay, stop it." And all I could think was, people pay you for this? As humans, we're an interesting species. We're interesting creatures. I always say to people, we gather for sunsets. I don't think any other animals do that. And self-abuse is a wonderful thing for us. Why do we hide who we are? And this is one thing I really appreciate my family. When I was 7, it was that story in the Bible about Samson and Delilah. No, I'm not very religious, but I am Jewish. We talked about that at Anarchapulco, yes. But the Samson and Delilah story, and she cuts his hair and he loses his strength. So as a kid, I was so afraid to get my hair cut. I'd go to the dentist any day, but I didn't want to get my hair cut. So I looked like a little girl, and that's when my parents didn't kiss, and I got the electric guitar, and they really supported me being my own individual. And I'm grateful for who I am these days. No one's perfect. But I think it's interesting how many times I know so many people behind the scenes, and most of the people that we are really aligned with are very genuine, which is nice. But there's definitely, the camera goes on and the persona changes. Things like that. So no, I definitely, I am who I am, and I am what I am, and I appreciate that. So I appreciate you asking the questions about that too. I really like people, and I'm curious as to what they've been through to get to be in front of me at this point. We have interesting journeys, to say the least, right?
Indeed, exactly. I feel really privileged as a what did you call it? A personal cheerleader, as a coach, to be there for people. And it's interesting you mentioned about self-doubt. I was following, or have been following, Gangaji this year. I have a history of going to India, and I sat in front of a guru until I figured out he was a pedophile and I was dying of cancer. And so that fell apart pretty good. But there's good things in there. It wasn't baby in the bathwater for me. I spent a lot of time sifting, how did I use this to go wrong? Not so much like, why is this wrong? And anyway, so Gangaji was saying, based on, I believe they call him Pundaji, is her teacher. And he says that self-doubt is the last thing to let go. Right. So, yeah.
It's a funny thing. Why do we question ourselves? And I'm an Aries and a Virgo, not that I'm totally into astrology, but I want everything perfect and I want it right now. And sometimes I'm very concerned with what I say and how I say it, because I want to communicate clearly with people. I have a lot of intense energy, and as much as I want to say so many of these people are stupid, you morons, I want to really be presented in a way that I'm not here to fight with people, and I really would like to be able to have discussions with people and things like that. So it is interesting. I really do my best to talk the talk and walk the walk at the same time.
I recognize that right away in you, right? I had touched down a little bit here and there with your work, and I knew you were very strong in the terrain movement, if you want to call it that, for lack of a better phrase to use, knowing that's oversimplified. But that I think when you said you have a problem with being, you said genuine, but I think you meant disingenuous or like inauthentic, right?
The thing is, I'm going to be who I am no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's a problem for other people. But I also learned, if you take something personally, that's not my problem, that's your problem. So
Right.
at this point, I need to be who I am. I need to express myself, and live my life to the fullest.
Yeah, yeah. And it's the best beacon. So if you have the goal of attracting people that you can get along with and you live with and that you could grow and create with, then if you aren't yourself, your people will never find you. They will never recognize you.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it. You got
Yeah.
it.
And that's how quickly, right? Over the course of a breakfast, I could know Adam has an open mind. Adam is being himself. You obviously didn't change. I had a chance to catch yours and Anna's talk after that, after mine. And then you weren't a different person on stage than you were sitting there over a private breakfast. So that's, to me, that's my highest value right there. And yeah, some people genuinely don't like it. They're discomforted by it. They are turned off by it. And I have my own answer, but why do you think that is?
That's a good question. I think that part of our journey is to really learn who we are and figure that out, So I don't know that everyone knows that. I think that we're all doing our best without question, but we're in different spots. So it just may be that. And it's funny, I had a friend that was he worked with a recording studio, and he'd worked with all these big famous people. And as I love music, and I would talk about someone, and then he would tell me about them, and I had to stop him and say, I want to enjoy these people's music without thinking that they're turds. So there's that, and I've definitely, I don't know, as I've talked with people, I just think that's it. We're trying to figure out who we are. We could take our whole lives to do that, which is fine. And then it's one thing to know who we are, and it's another thing to be engaged in the public experience, with other people. And it is funny these days. I remember the old days when Grandma would say, "You don't talk religion and politics with people you want to be friends with," right? But now we've learned you don't talk religion and politics and health with people you want to be friends with, right? So I think that there's a lot of people that just have things they maybe want to say. They don't know how to say it. I have known some musicians and actors, and they have to put on a different face to say these things. So it's a good question. Yeah, I don't know totally.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Jackie's comforting me. We're all just listening. Paul, nice to see you. Oh, and Facebook is working. So then they're lying to me. But yeah, that's all right. I'm just coming on so interested in, so we're going to jump right into that topic, live blood analysis right now. And if I could also just say how health talk, I rolled my eyes when you said that. So that's, like politics and religion now. Food similar, right? Like I had somebody that I really respect and is a huge researcher and has a ton of knowledge and has written huge books, not that size matters, but then shies away from the food. Right. And it's like, how could you shy away from the food? It's, go hard on other things. And then,
They're all pieces to the puzzle, Beth, and that's one thing I think is nice about what my dad did with the blood and what we do. Is very complementary to everything that is working. Okay. They're all pieces to the puzzle, and there's so many different pieces. And it's funny for us because we see different communities that think they have their piece, this is that piece. And I'm not here to, everyone is unique. So everyone's got to do what they have to do. But just because something worked for you doesn't mean it's going to work for me. And diet is very interesting because this is one thing we have control over, what we put into our mouths, excuse me. We don't talk about it a lot. My dad was friends with Atkins, the Atkins diet. A lot of people lost weight on that diet, but a lot of people gained weight on that diet also. So, food is a funny thing. I had a person recently I did a consultation with, and one of her issues is digestion, right? So it's funny because we look at the blood, this happens a lot, and all we see is structure. So then the response is, what's that have to do with my digestion? Well, first of all, it's all connected. And if your body's out of alignment, you think it could be putting pressure on your digestive system, right? So this was the issue. Diet was funny also because as the person wants consistent digestive, the detective work is the person doesn't have a consistent diet. Let's go backwards on some of these things. You want your digestion to be better. What are you putting into your body? And what I said, it's fun, Beth, because for us, it's the detective work. I'm a cheerleader for people. People do the consultations with us, and I'm on with them for 3 months minimum. I want you to understand your homework. I want you to do your homework. I want to help you hold yourself accountable. I'm the guy that's going to give you some of that guilt if you're not doing your homework. If you don't do your homework, you don't get recess, right? But diet for us is more one of these things where, what do you eat? What makes you feel good? What doesn't make you feel good? Let's start to do a little detective work first before I give you a diet. All right. So diet is a funny one. People are always asking us questions. Which diet do you believe in? We talked about that Weston Price book, The Nourishing Traditions, which talks about how food is prepared and things like that. But everyone's unique too. But really, come on. You're going to be healthy. You want to be healthy, and you're eating McDonald's and drinking and, microwave food, and you eat your lunch in the car on the way to work or breakfast in the car. Diet is kind of an interesting experience. Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Well, it's fun. I don't know if they're going to see my comment, so I just wanted to mention someone saw me at Chez Bon yesterday. That was like my girlfriend offered to take me out after dinner for an ice cream, which I never do. Like it's not on my radar these days at all. But that seems like fun, and go, and it wasn't the best time for an ice cream. I want you to know. And yeah, so we can definitely come back to food. I would like to talk more about that, but do you want to talk about here's one more thing, I can't stand it. So the health talk, why is it so confronting? We know whether it's food or health. And I'll just say first, if you don't mind, that I'm noticing this. It's continuous, and it's partly because I have inserted myself more in the health talk than I really ever have. It's been way more background for me, but there's one thing one consistent thing is where people have bad health, and that ends up being something they don't want to talk about. And then and we have so many layers and levels of awareness going on, and I think of myself as an aware person, but I am catching so many layers of denial where, certain things used to be just normal. So that was normal for me. And then you start thinking, well, that's not really normal, especially, talking to people and like, oh, that's actually discomfort. Oh, that's actually a kind of pain. Oh, that's a kind of dysfunction. There's and so waking up to those realities is not nice. It's like a rude awakening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's and so people don't want that. So that's what I'm noticing, where there's greater obvious risk that can be seen, right? Like you can see there are signs,
Yeah.
and then so that can be a real off, like back off kind of topic. I've made that mistake a few times.
Yeah, definitely. It's, ignorance is bliss, right? I don't want to know. I'm fine. I'm fine. And I say this to people all the time. You know yourself better than anybody, but we lie to ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
So we're our own expert. I want to be the best I can be. This is the only body I get. Oh, I enjoy life. I want to be here. I want to be able to run and swim and eat and do all these things. So I got to take care of myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to say a lot of people just don't appreciate, the fact that it's their fault.
Right. Interesting. And have you been through any major health challenges yourself in your life, or have you been more or less healthy?
Good question. Broke the collarbone once. I did though. I had mononucleosis when I was 1988. This is a big part of my dad's career evolution experience. I was going away to college in a week, and I got mononucleosis so bad I was showing signs of minor signs of hepatitis. All right, so something was going on, and this was cool because my dad had just come back from this trip around the world. This is where he ended up with Gaston Naissance in Canada, and he saw the live blood for the first time in his life. And he came back to Arizona, and he wants to do the microscope work. He wants to learn more, and then I get sick. So when I got sick, Dad found a German doctor working on an Indian reservation in Arizona. This Friedrich Ploeg, he actually flew in the Luftwaffe. So he flew in Hitler's Air Force, okay? And then he's on an Indian reservation. My dad's the Jewish doctor from Brooklyn, right? Brought in Dr. Ploeg, and they worked together on my case. And it was like the miracle case. My throat was so swollen I could barely breathe. I just wanted someone to cut a hole right here, right? My girlfriend, I'm going to miss her, I'm going away, and she just wants to kiss me, and I've got the kissing disease, so don't kiss me. Oh, no, But that was tough. When this went on, yeah, Dad brought Ploeg in. Ploeg did some interesting things by looking at my blood, and I had a treatment from him, and the next day I was better. My white cell count went down miraculously, blood tests and all this stuff, right? And I went to college 4 days later. So that's when my dad said to this guy, "You're going to come work in my office." So I had that go on. And then later on in life, wow. Yeah, there was only a couple with me, which is good. And you know what? No one's perfect. We all have to go through our stuff for sure. So later on in life, we were working with a clinic in Mexico, bringing people down for stem cells and things like that. And I had a cough. I had a little lower energy, and I'm always got energy. So Josh was checking out my blood. Family's tough. You can't always see what's going on with your family because they're so close. He had the doctors. He said, "Just check out Adam's blood. Like, let's do some blood tests." And I had walking pneumonia. So this is basically pneumonia, but I was strong enough to continue to walk. And I was teaching at a college at that point in California. I had final exams in a week. And the doctors, they said, "You need to stay. We need to do some things with you." And I stayed. It was crazy because they gave me IV antibiotics. All right. And when my brother looked at my blood, he thought I was dying. This is some of the worst blood we've ever seen was my blood on IV antibiotics. Okay. Ask me why I went that route. I don't know. This was just where we were at that moment. Great. So at that point, though, things shifted for me a little bit. But luckily, knock on wood, that's been it. And I do believe, Beth, that these things happen for reasons. For me, how I got past the pneumonia? I mean, I have my dad. I've got all the best remedies ever. I've got isopathics and stem cells and exosomes and cell therapy. I got everything. I had a little bit of grief. And it was one of those things, people, when you tell other people something over and over and you don't always hear it yourself, right? So there was a point in time someone said grief, and I went, oh. So I wrote one of those letters that I didn't send, but I got it out. And I did make one phone call, and I said what needed to be said. And then you get that sigh of relief, and the pneumonia went away. So journeys and learnings for sure.
Wow. Very good. So Mary was saying that it's hard to find genuine, authentic people if we're not ourselves. Been working on this the past year. Good for you. Yeah, self-doubt. Yeah, it's the last thing. I was thinking, well, we should go for that first then. If it's the last thing, let's do that now. People say, "I don't feel good," or "I'm coming down with something." I always ask them what they ate. And it's the last question they want to hear because there's then it starts to point, like you said, it's their fault. And that's the thing that people don't want to hear. They don't want to know. They're always so grateful when you're like, "Oh, no, it has nothing to do with your lifestyle, nothing to do with what you put in your body.
Right.
It just happened to you. It's genetic. It's, whatever it is." Ganchita will include you and your family in their prayers. And so that's very nice.
It's been interesting that way too, definitely. I like people, I think that we're all doing our best. I really, even, Western medicine, doctors went into the field to help people and to drive a Porsche and, golf on Wednesdays. And there's nothing wrong with that, really. So unfortunately, they were trained wrong, and for us too, this is part of the deal. We're not victims, and there are so many things for us. We really want to help people see what's gone on and help them hold themselves accountable. You take charge of your healthcare. This is where people put their power, give all their power to a doctor, to somebody else, to an expert. Fix me. We need to do what we can on our own. I tell people we can only do blood right now for people in the United States and people in Mexico. We have to get it in a certain amount of time, and there's only so many microscopes we have now. So there's a lot of people I can't help. I can't look at their blood. And when I say to people, for you guys watching and listening, before I look at your blood, align the car, get to the osteopath, not the chiropractor, take care of the teeth, all right, the root canals, the amalgams, things like that. Even the spaces in between the teeth need to be stabilized because it has to do with the structure of the body. And get the energy to flow and get some joy in your life, all right? If I can't look at your blood, do those things and then see what starts to shift. And too, Beth, it's funny because I talked to somebody a couple of weeks ago, overly sensitive, right? The emotions are just out of control. So when I look at the blood, the structure is out of alignment, putting pressure on the organs. And the organs in Chinese medicine are related to the emotions. So there is this point where no matter what this person does with the emotional tools, there's still pressure on the liver. So that means there's going to be some difficulty with the anger experience. So still, something went on with the person that threw them out of alignment. And then the person needs to be able to get to someone to align the car. And we align our car once or twice a year, but we don't align our bodies until we fall and hurt ourselves. So this is very important. We really harp on structure of the body a lot. I know energy workers that are awesome. I know the emotional people. I know the spiritual people, awesome people. And so many people miss this foundation of the structure of the body. So there are times, and I like this, the other day I'm irritated and everything's going wrong. And well, I can blame Mercury in retrograde on that one. So we can blame the stars for certain things, We definitely pick up energies. So sometimes there was a day I was so angry and I was in an area that I hadn't been in before. And I thought, this isn't my crap, so we can pick up stuff too. But it's still, if we do our homework, then we're much less susceptible. We're much more grounded and centered. Then we can do our thing. So I appreciate the power we have as individuals. It's a big deal for us, So for you guys listening, keep your power. Don't give it to the other people, and start to do things to start to see what you can do for yourself, because we can do quite a bit for ourselves. Doesn't mean we can't do everything for ourselves. We do need, nature does nothing in isolation, is what we would say. So sometimes you need to find someone to help, someone to support, someone just to listen. The conversations are very powerful too.
Right. So we're definitely getting into live blood analysis, but I'm going to say one more thing first.
Sure. Go ahead.
That's just how you're, because I had a new revelation. It's not a new subject, but in terms of, we're not victims. And then I'll be a pain in the neck and I'll say we are, but it doesn't serve us to go every day, all day in the mode of I'm a victim. Now, that's become common knowledge. That's become, or at least in my world, it's become more common. And in fact, it ended up flipped where they would weaponize that don't be a victim against you.
Yeah.
So, I'm thinking of one example where someone was victimizing someone and then told them, don't be a victim. Right. So you end up with this kind of double speak and abuse of that spiritual idea. Now, I know where you're coming from. I just feel like I want to speak to this. And so I'm releasing this morning, and it's doing my own inner work and bumping up against the program. And, it's all me, and I'm assuming responsibility for it. And I can see the dimensions in these two very distinct sides, and there's a war going on a little bit. And at some point, as I'm letting it go and it's becoming more and more transparent, I do remember we are slaves in a system, and that this isn't all me, right? But if you went every day, all day with the awareness of being victimized as a slave in a system, then the pain would be off the charts. Now it works against us because when we suppress that pain, then you tolerate it day in, day out. If there's anything that could be done about it, I am not on that track anymore. But all of that just to say, I do agree. Like, take responsibility for what you can take responsibility for, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
And I also believe, for me, I think life happens for us, not to us.
Mm.
So even when strange things go on, the clinic was shut down, and that was one of the best things that happened to us. It's because we were the rat in the wheel, and now we could focus on sharing this work with the world. So now it's out there. And a lot of the times, for us, there's something that goes on with health for sure. You're not being attacked by germs and parasites and viruses. So you're not a victim on that one. No how, no way.
Mm-hmm.
But I hear you on that. It's an interesting one too, because it's funny, until we learn some of these things, like, I'm not a slave. What do you mean I'm a slave? But then we learn these things. What's that? No. Yeah, we learn these things, and it's funny because I'm living in Mexico, so I'm much less, affected by. I don't care about. I mean, I care, but there's that circle of concern and circle of influence. I know what I have influence over, and I need to really be focused on sharing this, having the conversations. When people read Dad's book, when they chat with us, their lives are different. Information can really shift so much for us. So for me, Josh, we need to stay focused. With as much craziness as going on in the world, I get it, but it's kind of like sports. When your team loses and you're upset about it, what can you do about that? And I have no interest in being upset. So I just put my attention where I need to.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
And so what's the history of live blood analysis? Where did it begin? Yeah.
That's a good question. And this is something I want to do. I'd like to put together something by way of like a family tree, to see where things started. Okay. Because different people that using the microscope throughout history, different perspectives. Dad was with Gaston Naissons, awesome. And what Dad learned from there was great as far as being able to look at the live blood. Naissons was still a bit of a germ theorist. Okay. Even people like Enderlein and stuff like that. So that's a good question. The microscope has been around for a long time. My father was the third doctor in United States history to look at the live blood. First was Royal Rife, second was Virginia Livingston Wheeler, and third was my father. Okay. We know from people like Berlando, he's been doing this. He was looking at blood for a long time. That was part of his journey. All right. Where did people learn? There was a point in time where there was no one to teach these things. Okay. The work that my dad learned from these two German teachers, we hired private detectives, and we do not know where they learned this work. We're pretty convinced it came from concentration camps, where they were able to experiment on humans, my relatives, right? But the live blood thing is very interesting. Many different people throughout history. There was definitely a split. Maria Blecker was teaching things, and in her book is interesting. She says, some people see holograms in the blood that represent organs, and that's not possible. And I don't think she liked my dad. When there's just a few people doing these things, sometimes that. And my dad, he was not an ego guy, but my dad said what he needed to say, and a lot of people didn't like that. So he definitely rubbed some people the wrong way. But time goes on, okay? Dad's doing this for a long time. He learned from these two German teachers, and then the way he learned was by observing the blood, looking at people. And he would say, if you want to learn, you get the microscope, and you have a good day, you look at your blood. You have a bad day, you look at your blood. You hit your head, you look at your blood. You start to see patterns. And he said, also, for people that are interested in learning, he would say this. He said, I have a video. He said it took him 1 to 2 years of apprenticeship to really grasp this work. And he says, I consider myself pretty bright. He was brilliant. Like, he could do advanced math in his head. He actually got in trouble as a kid. 4th grade, they gave him a placement test in math. And he did the 12th grade test and got 100% and didn't show any work. So they accused him of cheating and gave him another test, and he got 100% as well. But as time went on for my dad, looking at the blood, learning, he tried to teach it. He said, if you want to learn, you need to observe for at least a year before you say anything to anyone. And right now, you can take a 12-hour course for $99, and you can tell people all about hydrogel and graphene and nanotechnology in their blood and prescribe supplements. So one thing that's confusing, Beth, is we do not do live blood analysis. Live blood analysis is a brand. It's also known as nutritional microscopy. So we analyze the blood live, but we do not do live blood analysis. So for any of you guys that have had live blood analysis, we've had people look at our images and say, oh, I've had that done. If you haven't had us do this, you have never had this done. And I actually know people that claim to see holograms, and I have seen their work, and there's nothing there. So we do not do live blood analysis. Live blood analysis is definitely looking at deficiencies, 10 different types of red cells. There's one type of red cell. It's decomposing different ways. But live blood analysis will look at deficiencies and then give you supplements. This is not what we do. All right. We look at your blood. We see physical issues, energetic issues, emotional issues. And if you've seen some of the images, Beth, we see some pretty crazy stuff there. All right. Now, interesting too, because there's something going on right now with new German medicine where people are talking about it a lot with the CT scans from Hammer, right? And we see images. What is it these days with science? Causation and correlation and all this stuff, right? My dad, for decades, did this. All right. What we have done is we have something that's replicable, repeatable. We've seen patterns. Dad would see something in the blood. The person would say, I have this issue going on with my knee. Great. Dad would look at the blood, wouldn't see the knee. He'd see the hip. The knee is the result. We work with aligning the hip. The knee issue goes away. The digestive problems related to structure as well. So when Dad looked at the blood, he didn't believe it for at least the first year, but he was seeing true root cause. When he addressed what he saw in the blood, the images changed and the person got better. So it's a strange spot we're in too, Beth, because, live blood analysis over the last 4 years has become very popular. In the United States, guys, the term dark field is owned by the CDC, right? You're not allowed to use it. But you got to realize this. Dark field people don't get in trouble. We did. Why did we get in trouble? Well, Dad was curing cancer. And also these days, the supplement companies are owned by the pharmaceutical companies. So if you're looking at blood and selling supplements, they're not going to hassle you. Besides the fact that supplements, as far as we're concerned, don't fix anybody. They can support you and help you manage, but you can put a Band-Aid on the dam on the front. You got to get to the back of the dam to see where the leak is coming from. And the way we worked, Beth, was very interesting. We didn't see people for extended periods of time because we didn't have to. People got better.
You didn't see what for a very long time?
We didn't see people. Our patients, when Dad had patients come to see him, he didn't see them for long periods of time because he didn't have to. They got better. All right. And it definitely was not using live blood analysis. And someone recently.
Okay. So can I jump in there? So there is a live blood analysis. It's a brand. It's a thing.
Yes.
And so you want to make sure that you're not associated with that. So we get that. But in essence, I want to talk about live blood. So how long is blood alive out of the body?
Depends on the person. You got an 8-year-old child that's full of life, the blood will be alive for days. You got an 80-year-old person, my dad would say, the quicker the blood dies, the quicker you die.
The quicker the blood dies, the quicker you die. Right. Right. Yeah. So that says to me, it has a life of its own, not connected with the nervous system, not connected with even the circulatory system, because it's outside of the body now with no direction, no volition, no choices, no nothing. Right. So then is that what you're saying? It has a life of its own?
I'm saying it dries up. So once it dries up, there's only so much we can see. When we look at the blood, we see the microzymas, the symbionts, the bions, which they never die, but they'll stop moving. The blood dries. So I don't know that I say it has a life of its own necessarily. That's a good question. But I definitely know that it only stays alive on the slide for so long.
Right. And then so if it dries up, then is it just a matter of adding water?
I don't know. We've never experienced that. We've never tried. Part of it is when Dad had the clinics, we were so busy that we didn't have time to experiment with things.
Right.
So
Yeah. I'd be so curious about keeping blood alive. Like, has that been part of your experiment in any way?
actually, I'll tell you this. No, it's funny. I was started as a music teacher. So my girlfriend and I were analyzing one of these, toxic substances that the world went through the experiment with, and trying to figure out how to keep things alive for extended periods of time. And I learned something crazy. You know what I learned about? A petri dish. You can actually put a slide in a petri dish and stays alive a little longer, which is funny, right? But
Yeah, because
to,
that's a nutritive medium that the cells can live on, right?
right, more or less. It's a little isolated, so it's less affected by what's going on externally. It's still an interesting one because we always talked about this. You are not a petri dish. When we take the blood out, we want to see it as quick as we can, basically. But I'll tell you this: my dad's one teacher, the story was she would observe the blood as it would decompose and recompose over a period of time. This is like the Wilhelm Reich experience where he was seeing, with the grass would decompose, the ions were coming out of the grass, and then they would create new life. So it's not that we've never been able to do that. We just never had the time. Dad was working with cancer patients and we were booked up 6 months ahead of time. So there was no time to experiment. These days, that's what's nice, especially with Anna involved as a research scientist. I'm learning about how to do rigorous science. We don't share things until we've done it repeatedly, which is one of my frustration with the ridiculousness of the live blood stuff with the nanotechnology and the graphene and hydrogel. They saw things, they didn't know what the heck it was, and they just started putting it out there like they were experts. And that's just irresponsible. So we really do our best to observe. We're still learning. And these are experiments I want to do. So, it's a good question, Beth. No one's asked that one before.
Yeah. So Mary's asking if I put my blood on a slide once it's dried, it's dead, or how do you know when it's dead?
No, usually for us, we look at the microscope, it stops moving. It dries.
So there's no movement is the sign of death?
Basically, yes. It's the sign of at least something that's more fixed. So when we take the blood out, when we do our distance consultations, in the United States and Mexico, we can send you a slide kit, instructions, you stick your finger, sample on the slide, you got to get it back to us within 24 to 36 hours. And we can see what we need to see. But I'll tell you this, the holograms themselves, if the blood dries, we still can see the holograms. When blood dries, it looks very different. So it's not as easy for us to find what we're looking for, but it's there. The difference when we see the blood live, we can see the plasma activity. So for us, once the blood is dried, once the plasma is dried and we don't see the activity, then all we can see are the holograms at that point. And yeah, I don't know if it's technically dead or not, but that's what we say at that point.
Oh, interesting. So about 24 to 36 hours. And I also would be curious because blood is like a moving target, right? So you take a blood test. I remember I was getting just countless blood tests when I was sick with cancer, and at least once a week, they'd be drawing blood. And I finally asked them, so what's the verdict? How is my cancer showing up in that blood? And they're like, oh, your cancer doesn't show up in blood. And I'm like, this is over. I'm never, right? Like, what are you guys, vampires? What are you doing with my blood?
Right.
Like this. Yeah. Right? And then, and at the same time, it is a moving, it's like, you're taking a photograph of something that's entirely moving in circulation, or at least that's the hope, right?
Yeah.
That I doubt anyone would be alive if they didn't have that going on. And then, blood from different parts of the body also would be very different, like blood from your head serving a lot of maybe cranial matter or, and neural matter, and then blood in your knee or your fingertip. So don't you think there would be some differences in that? And is
Sure.
it something that
that's a good question too. We've had people that don't have fingers. We've had to take blood from other places. We've had blood from animals, from all kinds of different things. So for us, the blood circulates. It's the one thing that communicates with everything in the body. It's liquid. Liquid is the best conductor of vibration. All right. And it's also, if you think about this idea of cloning. So if I was to be cloned, they would take my blood and my clone would have my broken collarbone. Somehow the information is there. All right. And this was the Edgar Cayce quote that Dad loved of the physician of the future will diagnose the condition of the entire body through one drop of blood. We don't diagnose because that's just putting a label on you, but we can see what needs to be seen. And what happens with us with the blood is, yes, it is changing. We're very dynamic. We're changing all the time, right? We get these snapshots as one thing, but then you can see patterns. The holograms, if you fell and your sacrum is an issue, you jammed your sacrum, we will see that image in every drop of blood we take from you until the issue is fixed, is changed. So there are certain things that are definitely consistent without question. All right. Then also too, I love looking at blood before and after all kinds of things. It's fun, but you would be surprised at what changes the blood and what doesn't. All right. And this is part of what we want to do. And I think I mentioned this to you before. We want to do some proof of concept studies for people. We have some interesting stuff as far as being able to really help people evaluate what they have going on with treatments, devices, whatever. And if I had something that I thought was working, I would want to do something where I could objectively observe some of these things. So for us, it's patterns are one thing. Seeing that the blood changes quickly, it'll change real time, Beth. So when Dad had the clinics, we'd look at your blood, we'd see structural issues or something, we'd put you on the table, osteopath would work with you, we'd look at your blood immediately afterwards, and it'll change immediately. All right. Dad would say, we could do great treatment on you and you feel awesome. Your blood looks great. You go jump in traffic. Someone cuts you off. You start screaming and flipping people off. You can change things. All right. So it's still about, for us, what's very important is looking at the whole drop of blood. We take the drop, when you put it on the slide, it'll move for a little bit. And then there's a point where it spreads and it settles. And then my job as the microscope technician is to go to the best spot first. Okay. I'm going to look there, and when I find that awesome looking spot where the cells are not on top of each other and there's space and things look great, that's your potential. That's in there somewhere. Okay. Live blood community, most of the content I've seen from most of the courses, which I have seen, they're not taught that the blood cells are between 1 day old and 120 days old. So when you see this rouleau that everyone's so concerned about, the stacking of the blood where it looks like a roll of coins or quarters, I see that in everybody's blood, okay? I look at the center, the best spot, and then as I scroll around, the older cells go towards the edge. Those are the older decomposing cells. I have a student in our course that did a 5-year study on rouleau, okay? So when a live blood analysis person looks at your blood and says rouleau, you got to ask them, can you scroll around a little bit and see if you see something else? If I see the rouleau all over your slide, then I know it's a problem. Okay, but it is fun how many things we can do. Let's look at your blood, and Qigong is awesome. These little things, and this is another conversation too as we start to talk. Anna and I, our presentation in Anarchapulco was breaking the spell of disease. All right, so when a doctor tells you you have 2 months to live and you die is one thing. When a live blood analysis person tells you got parasites and you're screwed is another thing. All right. When there's a device, when people do these scans, Beth, I have seen the craziest scans. You guys, we're all trying, right? We're all looking for something objective to help us figure out what's going on. When you get a 120-page scan that has all these words in it you do not understand, does that make you feel good? Does it make you understand or help you to understand?
That's what you provide, or that's what they provide? You're saying
no, we do. But this is what's interesting too. No, I'm just saying in general, as people are looking to see what's going on with their bodies, we want to find something that can give us something objective. Western medicine will do some blood tests. We can appreciate tests. We don't always appreciate their interpretation of those tests is one thing. But as we look at things, for us, it's about patterns, finding a baseline, seeing change, doing something, and then seeing if it changes or not. So yeah, the blood is very dynamic. I can look at your blood 3 times in 1 day and always see that sacrum there, see the blocks, but then I can see at one point, the flow is nice because you're relaxed, and later on you're stressed and the blood changes. So it's really, though, it's a question of looking at the whole slide, like looking at the whole person and seeing the patterns there. All right. When we do our stuff, and it's funny because you mentioned a couple times about simplifying some things. One of our jobs is to simplify things. And my dad said, it's not that we're dumbing things down. My dad always said, health is simple. People are complicated. So if we can give people the basics of health, which is that 4 bodies, the physical body, you need to take care of it. Align the car. You need to get the energy to flow. And that could be teeth related as well. Emotions have the tools. You need to practice joy every day. And the spiritual, the mind and consciousness, if you do not believe you can be better, there is nothing we can do for you.
Right. So I was going to go just back to the blood because I just want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, in terms of blood cells stacking, because obviously you cannot observe blood in the living being. This is so, it would be either impossible or a cruel experiment. You sort of intimated that might have been part of the history, or at some level that this came from I would like to go deeper in that, maybe at a different time on Rife and the microscope and the concentration camps and stuff like that. But so when you said you don't diagnose, like say the person, if you've been doing double blind everything and the person comes in and all you see is their blood. So can you tell them that, oh, your sacrum is out, without them reporting on some problem? And have you ever seen a problem in someone's blood that they have no experience of whatsoever?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. It's there's a few things. I can look at someone's blood and definitely, when I see people come to me in Mexico, all right? If I talk to you, sometimes I just go meet you and pick up the blood. Sometimes I bring people to the house and I bring it up on the screen. I enjoy doing that and showing them what they're seeing.
Movies with popcorn.
Yes, right. And I don't look at the history form ahead of time. I don't want to be influenced by it. And it's fun. My brother, he's the blood guy, right? He can look at blood and he can see things without you telling him for sure. I can't see what he can see. But I can look at the blood. It's fun as I look at the blood and say, oh, shoulder. And someone's like, oh, my shoulder. I didn't even put it on the history form. So yes, there are some things that we see that are obvious without question. And then there are other things that it's about that detective work. And this is what my dad said too. He said, when you're working with the blood, you look at the blood, you look at the person, you look at the blood, you look at the person, you look at the blood, you look at the person. There's a match there. All right. For us to really do the detective work, we have to talk to you.
Okay. Yeah. So the blood alone is not going to reveal.
The blood will give us a direction. Like I can look at a drop of blood and say the majority of what I'm seeing is structural. But then my brother can say, he knows the anatomy more than I do. We see scars. He can put the pieces together of, we have multiple scars, but when he can look and see the patterns, he can tell you which scar. So we can definitely see something without the person, but to really hit the nail on the head, we got to work with the person.
Right. And then, so when you say holograms in the blood and call it holographic blood, do you want to describe what you mean by that?
Sure. It's when we look at the blood, we actually see images that look like anatomy. So, and I can pull up a few images if you want me to do a little screen sharing. The images, I have images that match x-rays and things like that. So we look at a drop of blood, we take from a capillary finger, right? Capillary is only big enough for one red cell to fit through at a time. We can see bigger platelets. The platelets will squash and fit through, but the images we're seeing are much bigger than red cells. Okay, so the reality is, if these images were in your bloodstream, you could potentially have a stroke. All right, this is where the hydrogel and all this ridiculousness. They're showing these huge images. They're not real. They're holograms. Okay, this is also where we get into this interesting bordering on, the wooey wooey, but there's actually some good science to some wooey wooey, right? We see these images. They're bigger than red cells. They'll match anatomy books. So the basics of a hologram, holographic images, we're bouncing light, things are refracting, and we're taking a picture of what we call an interference field. I'm not the physics teacher, okay? So when everything in the body is doing its thing, it's this beautiful symphony. All matter vibrates at different frequencies, okay? This we know from the decent stuff they let us learn, right? In the body, different organs, different tissue, different frequencies. Beautiful symphony is happening. If something is out of balance, then it changes the frequency, and then it creates like a dissonance in music of sorts. And we can see that. That's the interference field. The microscope we use bounces the light. This is the dark field. It doesn't go straight through the sample like the bright field microscopes that we all used in high school. So you're bouncing light, you're refracting. We have an interference field that's on the slide, and we can visually see, like I said, I have images that match anatomy books. They match the x-rays and things like that.
They match anatomy what?
Anatomy books. They match the images from the books.
Oh, the shape of the organ seen at a particular angle. Because
Oh,
that
yeah.
will change as it goes 3D, right?
Yeah. You want to see? I can share a couple images if you want to see.
Sure. Yeah. Do you know how to hit your share on StreamYard?
One that says present here. We'll
Exactly.
see.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. And share screen.
If there's, I guess there's no sound with the blood.
Okay. No. And let me see window. Entire screen. Let's do
comments here.
Green 2. Yeah, go ahead.
The life of a creature is in the blood. I've happened to be on point and learning time in Greece. Thank you so much. And you did say where you're located, close to Guadalajara.
Yes.
And glad to hear Kara. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Somebody also had a question, but we can come back to that later about RH and something psyopy about that. She thinks. I think so too.
Uh-huh.
And then someone wants to hear your thought on graphene oxide fear mongering. I would say yes to that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'll show you the pictures in a minute. And blood type RH, we know we're learning about RH, pH resistivity. There's a chart from Claude Vincent that is awesome that shows diseases historically and really talks about our terrain. There's definitely something there. The thoughts on graphene oxide, I don't think about it. I'm tired of thinking about it. Watch the thing we just did with Renat Senham and Christian Northrup. Anyone live blood person who's showing you images of graphene oxide and all that stuff, they're not seeing it in the blood. It's impossible. All right. What they're showing you as images are incorrect. So ignore them. That's not to say I don't believe they're putting these things in the substances. I'm really not interested right now. We'll never know what's in those substances because of the inconsistency of the batches. Kaufman will tell you need teams of researchers and things like this. So I would ignore all the live blood people, and that will make your life much easier. Where we put our focus and attention.
Right on. And I'll just quickly add, don't take the drugs they say are curing it. Please.
Yeah, please. No.
Dangerous drugs.
This is another thing too, Beth. I think I know 2 different people that may be dead from overchelation due to people seeing things in the blood that are not there. Right? Wow. This is happening on both sides, guys.
Wow. I know. Yeah, natural medicine is, I'm sorry, equally as dangerous or more.
Oh, it's getting crazy, right? And like you said, we're like the outliers of the outliers. And Mary, salt or sugar crystals, all the nanocircuitry and the microchips, definitely salt. Definitely salt. We observe these substances, and and I told some of these people, but they didn't want to listen. I told some famous people that you guys know that continued to share that stuff, and you know what they did? They yelled at me for it.
They yelled at you, yeah.
Yep. Won't mention any names. Some days we'll get apologies. Let's show you a couple images. So, left side here on the screen, that is the knee from the anatomy book. Right side, can you see my cursor? Yes.
Yes, you can.
So right here, see this? This is what people would say are COVID crystals. This is an air pocket, and this is dirt. Okay? I kid you not. Air pocket, dirt. And people are telling people and scaring people and saying that's COVID crystals. They're wrong.
We might have to talk in code here. Sorry, Adam, I didn't warn you.
Oh, damn. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. That's okay. That's all right. It probably won't get once or twice. Not a big deal. But you say like boogeyman or whatever. Like
can do.
Thank you.
So we'll ignore that anyways because we're not going to waste our time. We're going to put our focus on something that's valid and valuable.
Okay.
This is my knee.
The blood and the Go ahead.
Yeah, this is the right side is an image. This is my blood. That's my knee in the blood. Okay. So someone fell on my knee at a concert and I had an issue and it showed up in the blood. Other things that we'll see, let me see here. This in the blood. These are holograms. Okay. Looks like a bone to me. Did the person have issues? Yes. All right. This one's interesting. The person broke their hand and then here's the drop in the blood. See the fingers? See all this stuff. Look how small the red cells are there. This is a very big image. All right? It's a hologram representing something the body wants attention with. This one was kind of fun because the person came to me and I found this image right here, and I didn't know what it was. When we're looking at this image here, there's something that looks very symmetrical. The texture around it is bony debris, and this is a white cell here. Okay, it's not easy to see with this, but realize when I'm taking the picture, the blood is live, so I'm actually seeing the white cell moving. This one, when I had the person in the clinic in Tijuana area, I said, I don't know what that is. And she said, I know what that is. She had just had this implants put in, and the one was really giving her grief. So there's something there. All right. You're matching with
you
the
see
X-ray.
that as one of those pegs?
Yeah. Uh-huh. It's this one in the middle, actually. All right. You can see the little hole here where the
Oh, okay, the inside part of that. Okay.
yeah. And it's
And then,
in, oh, go ahead.
and then, so you're saying there's actually no substance. That hologram is a shape made of light. Right?
This is where things are interesting too, because now there's a white cell attached to it. All right. And I've got awesome videos of there's a hologram and you see the white cells coming in from a distance. So this, I feel as though this is energy being physically manifested as the blood leaves the body. This is like the magic part of it. And you'll laugh at this one too, because I met someone in Spain and he was going to isolate one of these for us and see what we can analyze it. And you know what he did? Instead, he bought a microscope, and his name was Dr. Pablo Campra. He wrote the first graphene paper. So instead of doing what we asked, he went and created a whole mess for this world. So yeah, someday we'll isolate one of these holograms and try to see what it really is.
And then, so you said the holograms get created as the blood leaves the body. So that part would be hard to.
Yeah, it can't be in the blood because, like I said, this would clog up your, blood vessels and things like that. And yeah, we can't. The blood moves so quickly through the body. It's not that we can stick a microscope camera in there and see it. So we have to, at this point, wait until we can get the blood outside of the body. We have had people ask us as we stick the finger, there's interstitial fluid and other things. Is this potentially an artifact? I believe in artifacts, but when I see this every time, no matter when I take the drop of blood, there's some consistency there pattern-wise. And we've also done this with people that have had blood taken intravenously. So they're not sticking the finger, intravenously, needles going into the vein, and it's much less likely that we're going to get that one drop that happens to have some of that interstitial fluid in there. So we're really looking for the patterns, and this has been very consistent for us. When we see this person's blood, and Dad says, do you have any problems with your teeth? And the person says, yes. That gives us a clue. All right, you can see teeth here in this one. So they're good questions, Beth. We get asked a lot of the same questions all the time. So you're asking some unique questions. I appreciate that.
Could I ask a quick question? So all of the cells that are around the hologram, those are what you're calling the red blood cells?
Yes, you got it.
Okay.
Those are red cells.
And is that as big as they can be seen? Or is that not relevant for your purposes?
That's a good question too. With the microscopes, we do a 10, 20, and 40x. So we get up to 400 times magnification. The microscopes will do, they will do up to 100x, but to us, you're missing the forest through the trees, right? We want to see the context as well. So the size of the blood cells gives us an idea of the size of the image itself, all right? This right here, this is like part of the jaw and the gums, and here's like 4 teeth right here. If we see something that looks similar, but the red cells are smaller, then it's a different size. The image is, whatever we're seeing is different size in the body. The bigger the hologram, the bigger whatever it is we're actually looking at. And we see that in relation to the red blood cells. Okay,
so just to repeat, if you say have the cells at 100x, would your hologram also be 100x?
Yes, you got it. It's just, it's like as I zoom in this way, you see more of this.
Okay, so it's got a certain fixed nature to it then?
Yes.
And it's not sourced, would you say it's not sourced in the light that is bouncing and refracting?
I couldn't tell you. I'm not sure. I don't know. There really is only so much that I can tell you. What I can tell you is we need to study more, and we could use a team involved with some of that stuff. It's me, my brother. I do all of the emails and the website and the webinars and everything. I juggle like a circus clown. I have, Post-its and Post-its and Post-its and Post-its. So as much as we want to continue to do more research, yes, stomach, nice job, Nayakis, yes. As much as we want to do more research, my girlfriend is a research scientist. She's running this University of Terrain, and she's juggling like a circus clown. But the universe is supporting us. And as time goes on, we're getting the support we need and we're where we're supposed to be. I do want to know more for sure.
Nice.
Right? I do want to, and we have more to learn. We do not know everything, people. And what I've told people when we do our consultations, I don't know everything, but I think between all of us, we have the answers. We start to have the discussions, right?
Right. And someone wanted to clarify, ignore all live blood people?
I would. Drummer for truth. Yes, drummer. We need more drummers. Yeah, you know what? It's strange for me as a microscopist, someone working with a microscope, to say that. But what they're doing is, here's the thing. We know where that work came from. I know where live blood came from. All right. We know the people that developed it. I had people that worked with those people. And the people that teach it, there's inconsistency there. And they know that. It's a difficult one for us. There's a lot to be learned from the blood, but you cannot take a 12-hour, 2-day course and know things and start telling people things.
Right.
So if you guys have ever been to live blood analysis, they charge a lot less than we do. And I tell people, well, you get what you pay for is one thing, but there are some things there. At Anarchapulco was fun, Beth, because they had the woman doing live blood analysis there.
Oh.
And it was funny because Miranda said during my interview, she said, "Oh, we've got someone doing live blood analysis at Anarchapulco." And my response was, "Oh, that's too bad." And they didn't take it out of the interview, which was kind of funny. There's a lot of fear involved. Anyone that's looking at your blood and just giving you supplements and things like that, they're missing the forest through the trees. There's so much more going on there. And you know what, guys? They can see these things, but they say it's dirt. They ignore these things. All right. And these things have been there the whole time. There are people that have been doing this for a long time, and they're jumping on that whole graphene train and saying, "I've never seen this." Well, if they've never seen those things, Beth, then they're not looking at the blood, because I've seen these things for decades. Does that make sense?
Right. Wow. Yeah. Fancy.
And yes, ankle or foot. Go ahead.
It is ankle foot. Okay.
Yes.
And then the red blood cells look really different if you don't mind going back to that one picture. Sure. Talk about. So they look really different. They're all jagged, edgy.
Yes. Yeah. I can sell you a supplement for that if you want. No, what's going on here is this. These are older cells. The first thing we'll do is we'll find that best spot. When I do the blood for my brother, I go to the best spot. I take a 10-second video so he can see the plasma activity. All right. Then we go to the very bottom and I scroll very systematically, methodically. I want to see everything, and I'll do it a couple times so I don't miss anything. What you're seeing here is the edge of the slide. Those are older dying cells.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It could be also a result of someone taking a bad drop of blood.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working with people now and who have learned live blood analysis, and I'm having them send me videos of how they were taught to take the blood. And I got to tell you, people, I know a famous chiropractor we were working with in Tijuana. He's got 700,000 YouTube subscribers. He does a very comprehensive intake. He does the live blood. And every image they took from those people was horrible. It was not an accurate representation of the person because it was not a good drop of blood. If I squeeze your finger too hard, it'll crush the cells. If I don't do gently enough on the cover slide and I tap too hard or do something, it'll crush the cells. So those cells right there, I did take that picture, and I do work very hard to take a very good drop of blood. Even to the day my dad died, Beth, he would take more than one drop. Okay. If it didn't spread right, another one. And even to the point where minimum 2 always, because if we see something bizarre in one drop, we'll go to the second drop to confirm it or discard it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're saying that this shape of the foot and the bottom part of the leg is going to show up in every single drop of blood, no matter where you're taking it from this person.
Yes. This is the same person, by the way.
Okay.
Similar image, the whole leg, right? And I think I said this one to Eileen McCusick, right? Can you see? I think these are meridians we're seeing, things like that. Not that I know. The electrical experience of the body right there. This is the same person, same person, same drop, different image.
Same drop. So then there will be multiple holograms in one drop of blood?
Yes.
Okay.
When I take the images from my brother, I get a drop of blood. I take any place between 80 to 120 pictures. I get them to my brother, and he creates the report. With the report, you get between 12 to 18 pictures. He sees the patterns. So the sacrum will show up 10 times, right? The leg will show up 10 times. That's how you know that's a dominant focus. It's like the body going, "Hey, it's the leg." is my leg, hey, leg. So yes.
Right. And so what if they have more than one problem?
Aha, they do. No one has just one problem, but what the deal is there was always one thing that set us off center in the first place. Okay. And all the images that we will see will relate to that. So for example,
So then the leg would be the cause of
the leg, maybe, or maybe not. I have to see the rest of the images to tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I don't know this one offhand. Josh may know if he was here, but I'll tell you, there's one, when we went to Spain, one of the first people we worked with was a friend of Anna's, and the woman's in her 40s, and they wanted to do a hip replacement on her. Okay. 40s, too young for a hip replacement. We looked at her blood, and Anna was working at Shaw Wellness, one of the most famous clinics in all of Europe, right? Like she's working with top people, famous people, expensive place. And we looked at this person's blood, and we saw her hip, we saw her cervix, we saw scar tissue. So we put pieces together. Did she have a procedure on the cervix that created scar tissue? Yes, she did. So the reality was the cervix there was a procedure done. They burned a little too much. It created scar tissue. The scar tissue creates a strain pattern. It's something that pulls. If I tuck my shirt in too tight on the right side of my pants, I feel it here on the right shoulder. So her scar was pulling her hip out of alignment. The puzzle pieces. So what happened? We addressed the scar. We did some type of neural therapy, a scar treatment with the doctor there. Then we released the strain pattern that was pulling, and then we aligned the body. And you know what? She didn't need to get a hip replacement.
Nice. That's awesome.
Those are the pieces. It all points to the same thing. There's a dominant focus. I get chills with this. When you see it, it's very easy to see when you understand what we're looking at.
Nice.
It makes so much sense.
Nice. Just a couple of questions here that Mary wanted you to clarify more about Rollo. That's when the cells stack, and
Yes.
why it's not what they claim.
So what do they claim?
Pictures of that stacking. I guess we've all seen that in our feeds. But
that's funny. I can look and see. I have the cool pictures here, not the other ones. I have so many blood pictures. It's ridiculous.
I also wondered if the stacking is just the blood dying because it's outside the body.
You know what it is? Actually, it is. I don't see anything right here. I don't want to get distracted by staring at that. Here's the deal. With our friend Ira, who did the 5-year study of Merlot, and here's toxics. Leave that one there for the moment. Live blood will tell you Rouleau. Everyone's got it. It's a problem. I don't really know what specifically they'll tell you because I don't really care because they're not right. However, what happens? Yeah, what happens is this. It's interesting. We know that there's charge to the cells, right? When the cells become less oxygenated, they look like this. There's a little dip. They call them target cells for the live blood community. It's lower oxygenation. Well, there's a point in time where the blood cells, if they're not up to where they are or should be, then the body will remove them. We'll recycle them. We'll get them out of the picture. But there's a point where they'll actually stack together. And as they go through, it's almost like they're creating a battery. So the reality is those cells that are lower oxygen aren't ready to be removed from the system. They'll group, and then the body won't take them out of the system because that grouping has the charge that it needs to have.
Very cool.
It's really answer. Yeah, and the body is brilliant, so either way, like I said, this is one of those things, live cell analysis will say Rouleau, everybody has it. And I've done videos where I look at this awesome drop of blood and I scroll live and all of a sudden you see Rouleau, you see these horrible images, and then I scroll back and you see something awesome. So if you ever go get live blood done, guys, and someone says Rouleau, say, can you scroll around a little bit? Ask them if you can use their microscope. See if you can scroll around and find something different there, right?
Okay.
So good question.
Very good. My brain's firing all cylinders here. Someone just wanted to know, and this is a really good question, can they work with you if they're outside of the US and Mexico, and they may want to make an in-person appointment, which I assume means traveling to you, so then it wouldn't matter where you are, correct?
Yes. At this point, in the United States, we consult. That's it. So we don't have a clinic or anything. Josh does the blood. We have Fiona that works with us, and she'll explain the report to the person. I'll get on with people and I'll be with them for 3 months, helping them find the right person, giving them the right tools, tips, tricks, whatever. We've got the resources to support them. So United States, no. Mexico, Anna and I do have some things we're doing with people. I have some resources here with some practitioners, which is awesome. I do not have a clinic or an office, but what we'll do is if you're in Mexico, and if you can come for a 5-day program for us. So with that, we all-inclusive stuff. We look at your blood. We do other things to technique-wise or test-wise that Anna has some different devices and things. And then we'll get you to some of the practitioners. We'll talk to you about your structure, your energy, your emotions, the mind and consciousness, and we help you put together a plan on how to really take care of yourself throughout your days. We call it our Life Reset program. And that one we do as a retreat, which is fun. We don't have one planned right now, but the Life Reset, there's the Life Reset retreat and the Life Reset program. And the program is on demand. We do it for individuals or couples. So, we just put the website together the other day. So if you guys reach out to us at the Bigelsen Academy, you type up my last name, we're the only Bigelsens out there. You can always send an email and say, hey, I heard Adam talk about a program. I'd like to know more. And then I'll start to communicate. As soon as we have our website up, I'll start to share that stuff with people too. So that we can do.
Good. And did I get that correct?
Bigelsen Academy. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So you can click on that link. That is the website where you could go and ask about particular retreats or anything like that. That sounds like fun to me. And then Mary's excited to look at her video on her own blood analysis differently now. So that's very cool.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I was going to say real quick, for any of you guys that have had this done, the pattern is parasites, detoxes, cleanses, supplements. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But to go back and look at some of the videos that we've got, platelets are inflammation. So if you've got some platelets, they're telling you something. All right. Look at your blood, the video that you've got. See what you can see through as opposed to what the person is actually telling you. All right.
Right. And so a couple of things. Let's see. Do the holograms only reflect disease?
No. They reflect what the body is concerned about. So we'll definitely see injuries. We'll see worries. We'll see emotions.
Okay, so then the answer would be more yes. So it's like what's out, what's off, what's stressed, what's...
Yeah, well, it'll show you, we see anytime someone's pregnant, we see the baby, we see the fetus. So that's not...
Okay, so that's totally different.
Yeah, that's not something bad that's going on.
Yeah, than a bad ankle or anything like that. Yeah. Yeah, so then the holograms reflect more than just disease.
Yes.
Okay. And then, so how can you tell that the cervix that comes up or the cervical part of the spine comes up? How can you tell that that's a reflection of the positive or the negative? Say, that something's wrong or something's good.
For us, we don't say anything is good or bad. It's all information that the body is giving you so you can work forward. So if we see the cervix in the blood, it's there for a reason. If there's nothing going on with your cervix, then there's no reason for it to show up in the blood.
Right. So then would the assumption be that if it shows up in the blood, that something wrong is happening?
Something needs attention.
Needs attention. Okay. Yeah. So then if the baby shows up so a pregnant woman will have a baby in her blood period?
Yes. It's something that the body is basically saying, and just to show you real quick, this is fun. Here's our cervix, one of our cervix images. Basically the body is saying, there's a baby here. There's a baby here, and it's funny because we like to think we're all conscious, but I've heard stories with overweight women going to the bathroom and having a baby because they didn't know they were pregnant.
Oh, I missed that. I don't know if it was me that cut out a little bit, but they went to the bathroom and had a baby, you said?
Yes. Basically, overweight woman that did not know she was pregnant. And so like it's basically the body's trying to tell us there's a baby here, there's a baby here, there's a baby here. And the reality is I have seen people be so unconscious that they're pregnant and didn't even realize there was a baby there.
Wow. Amazing.
So the body's saying, pay attention. There's a baby here.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious because if the baby's in distress compared to a healthy baby, how would you know the difference between that?
That's a good question. We haven't seen that very much, to tell you the truth. In our history, we've got probably over 100,000 images in our database. And as you ask that question, we've had pregnant women come through. We've been able to see the baby. We haven't had much go on where we looked at the image and there was something that was not quite right with the baby. We did a lot of cancer things as one thing and those types of diseases. But yeah, we just didn't, and that may be a question for Josh because he was there with Dad each time. So yeah, just not something that I have seen very much at all.
Right. And so it definitely, I imagine you must be a fan of Veda Austin's work.
Veda Austin's interesting. I like Veda Austin. I got to tell you, she just had her new book come out, and the last few pages she put our images in there.
Nice.
So our pictures are in there. And it's funny though, because we first heard about Veda Austin, I didn't totally understand what she was doing. And here's the thing, guys. 10 of us can look at a cloud and see 10 different things. Okay, so there's something there. There's interpretation and whatever. But when she does some of these images, some of them, there's no question about what you're seeing, which is really cool. And what she's trying to show people is awesome with the Dr. Emoto experience, that there's consciousness there in that water and there's energy can get in there and we can see things that way. For us, we appreciate water. I looked at Gerald Pollack's blood once. That was cool. We have different things we can do to measure water. And then even like right now, people are all excited about this Tesla device. And you know what we're doing? We're treating the water, because we're so dynamic ourselves and we can do things. We can measure the water, different things with water. We can do the device on the water and then measure that without our emotions being involved, without the placebo effect being involved and all that stuff. So water's an important experience to us. Definitely.
Right. And then blood being a liquid medium, not so far off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And without that liquid, like you said, that you call that dead blood. So there's no life in blood without water. And we know that in a few days, 3-5 days, you're going to die of dehydration. Your blood won't be alive anymore.
Right. Yes. Water is important.
Or is your blood alive after you die? Some gory questions. I don't know how you figure that exactly out, but.
Oh, well, I'll tell you this. One thing I know that I think is awesome is those little symbionts, the microzymas, the bions, whatever you want to call them, they never die. All right. They help us to create who we are and they help us to decompose. So when we die, part of us never dies.
Right. That the life, now would you call that pleomorphism, that the life is transforming?
No, the pleomorphism is how those little guys will morph and change and adapt into other forms. I would just call that these little guys for us, they're like our chi, our prana, the force. This is the essence of who we are. So, and I love these conversations where the soul comes in and cosmic superimposition, and now we have this physical thing that starts to happen. To me, it's that's part of the soul, our consciousness. And one of my dad's goals, and I saw someone mention this earlier, was to prove that the soul and consciousness exist in the blood. And blood is very sacred.
Can you say that one more time? The soul
and consciousness exist in the blood.
Okay.
And blood is very sacred to many different cultures and religions. And it's interesting because when Dad was with Naissance in Canada, who has a very powerful microscope, there were these little things that they saw that they zoomed in on, and they were perfect 6-sided stars. Okay, which is that Star of David, which represents the soul in Judaism. That's also this. I have it on my water bottle. The Dr. Emoto's Love and Gratitude crystal is the same shape.
Good. You don't have a copper water bottle?
I do not have a copper water bottle.
That's good.
Yes. But so the soul, and even I have a video, which is great with the dad with these young rabbis, and he was looking at the blood, and most of them were speaking Hebrew, but you could see that they were just amazed at these things that they've talked about in the Torah, the Bible, these microscopic life forms, the soul, and there it is. It's in the blood. So I think my dad did what he set out to do. But yeah, interesting thought there.
Okay, so then you're saying that, did you use the word microzymes to describe soul? Micro what?
Microzymas. Those are the little guys in the blood that move around. Quantum dots. No. Those little guys that move around, that's That's your life force, your chi, your prana, whatever you want to call it. And they've been called different things throughout history. Western medicine says they're fat particles, and they do morph into fat particles because they morph into whatever it is that we need. And we've had conversations with like Berlando and some other people we know from Spain about symbionts and stem cells and exosomes. How does this happen to us? How do we create who we are? So those little guys, though, there's different developmental forms and shapes of them. So there's different names we've learned depending on the somatid, the mychete, the symprotite, and we're still learning a little more about that. So no, those little guys, that's just your life force there.
Oh, interesting. So from my own internal studies, I have seen that life itself has no form, that it's the source of all the forms.
Mm-hmm.
And so how does that fit with what you're saying here, that the particles are they're
the life. And here's the deal, and this is an interesting question. They will morph and adapt into whatever is necessary. You've got information, energy, matter. The information, what does the body need? All right, we're adapting constantly to information all around us, outside and within us. So these little guys will change based on that. And what are they going to change into? Like I said, they'll change into bacteria for inflammation. This is the homotoxicology experience. If a toxin enters the body, we excrete. That's normal. If we can't excrete it, then we create inflammation. This is bacterial. We create the bacteria. Those little guys turn into bacteria to help us. And if they can use the inflammation to push things out, then they revert back to little healthy microzymas, symbionts. If things can't get out with the inflammation is how we heal, right? So anti-inflammatories, not terrain. However, when the inflammation becomes trapped, we become inflamed. Now things back up and deposit. And that's the third stage of the homotoxicology chart. 2 Nobel Prizes have been won with work based on this chart. I just heard Alex Zeck and Jacob Diaz talking about it. I'm so happy people are learning this word about this. So excretion first, then inflammation, bacterial, then deposition, things deposit if they can't get out where you're weakest, and that's when things become fungal. So those little guys, Beth, will turn into fungus. Why? To help us. If we think about the Paul Stamets experience, where he took that oil spill and put mushrooms on it, the mushrooms extracted toxicity from the soil and converted it to organic matter. It's the same exact thing in the body. This is where we're about the terrain. If it's happening out there, why is it not happening here? All right, we don't do the detoxes and the cleanses. We don't kill your fungus. It has a job to do. If you have too much of it, there's a block, and there's an over-proliferation. We see the blocks in the blood. We help you remove the blocks, and those little guys, the fungus will go away. All right. So good questions, definitely.
right. So it still sounds like pleomorphism to me. They're changing up in their form.
That is pleomorphism. When they're changing the form, that's what pleomorphism is changing the form based on the terrain.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. And so you talked about something that I've just recently had some experience with in the past couple of years, and it is osteopathy.
Oh.
And you're saying the other day privately on the phone how, you go in, and I modeled this, Adam. I want you to say that because I had an appointment with someone, and I know we don't have the same views about pretty much anything. She asked me for my pronouns on the intake form.
Right.
So I put "they lied." And I thought that would be the test of whether she continued to work with me, and she did. So that was good.
Right.
And then so I made sure that she didn't. I'm not putting her in the role of managing my health or diagnosing my health, or and there's obviously things they need to do. You said that all you want from them is not their big like assessment or anything about it, but you just want the work that they do. So how do you see that having so much efficacy that even like you could completely remove their paradigm, if that's true, and then they still get results?
That's a good question. And here's the thing is this. The osteopath these days, when we recommend people to go to osteopaths, which is awesome, most people have never heard of one, is one thing. Before Carnegie and Rockefeller, all of the medical schools in the United States were osteopathic, right? And in the US, you got to go through the whole 7 years of medical school and 2 more years for osteopathy. So most doctors don't understand the structure. And this is something my dad learned. He was thrilled. He learned about osteopathy reading Edgar Casey's medical readings. He recommended osteopathy for pretty much every single person. And he hated chiropractors. Too forceful is what they said, or what he said. Chiropractors are evolving. They're not all so forceful anymore. And even my dad would say, if you want to work with people, become a chiropractor. It's the easiest. You can touch people. You can do whatever the hell you want. Okay. But osteopathy these days, you need to find the 100% hands-on classical osteopath, because many of them in the United States write prescriptions and do surgeries. All right. And even I have a local guy here. I like him. He's great. He was trained by the guy that worked on me when I was 12. All right. And this guy was a superhero. So the thing is this, though, my local guy still believes in, viruses are a problem and things like that, So my response with him is just work on me structurally and don't talk, So it's a difficult one. This is, Beth, I can look at your blood and I can see a pattern that makes total sense and figure out what's going on with you and where it started and what to do about it. But the hardest thing is to find the right practitioner. And the classical osteopaths, I'm going to see one. I'm going to see the other guy I saw when I was 12. Both of these guys went from the same person. And I need to talk to him about the fact that we do not want to witness the extinction of the classical osteopath. We need to do something to preserve this work, to get more people involved. There are a lot of people that do cranial sacral work, which is a small offshoot of osteopathy. Okay. But yeah, so when you saw somebody, when I talk to people with the blood, and the blood says structure, and we say osteopath, then there's the Cranial Osteopathic Academy. You can look it up online and put in your zip code, and you see percentages. And you got to find the 100% structural person. And I will teach people what to ask them. This is when you talk to an osteopath, ask questions, interview them before you go to them. And you got to find the one that resonates with you. And that's one of the more difficult things. I got people that it's cheaper sometimes, Beth, for you to come visit me in Mexico and see my osteopath than to see an osteopath in the States.
Interesting. Yeah, the person that I'm working with, she studied 10 years. She did or 9 years. She did 8 years of the school and then 2 years of a thesis or something along those lines. And from all appearances, she's 100% structural.
Mm-hmm.
I actually saw someone also that had been trained by the same person. And, I didn't dislike it, but I actually got no results from it whatsoever. Yeah. I liked it. And I know it was relaxing, and I know it's nice. It's nice to have somebody put their hands on you, and there's goodness in it. Turn it, and
is the sign outside says live recording in progress.
Exactly, I know, and it's like they'll steal everything from my door, unfortunately. So I will. Do you mind talking a little bit about osteopathy and why it works? What they're doing differently than a chiropractor? Is that okay with you?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I'll be right back. Okay.
So osteopathy, the classical osteopaths for us, what they're doing is they're working with the strain patterns. All right, they're working with the adhesions. Scar tissue creates a strain pattern. Adhesions create a strain pattern. One of my osteopaths said to me, if you take peanut butter and put it on the countertop, and you put saran wrap on the peanut butter, you pull, you see where it's pulling. That's an adhesion. But then he said to me, then leave it there for years. This is what we do. We have a procedure, an intervention, minimally invasive, right? They put a little camera in and they mess up connective tissue. That's a problem for the body. So osteopaths will work directly with that and help to release the strain patterns. So the typical experience with the chiropractors has been this. You fall and knock yourself out of alignment, chiropractors can put you back in. Easy, right? But if you've got this shoulder thing that's been for years for you, well, the chiropractor wants to see you 3 days a week for 6 weeks because there's something pulling on the shoulder. So you're being pulled out, the chiropractor puts you in, and the body pulls you out, the chiropractor puts you in, and the body pulls you out. Over time, they break down that scar tissue, okay? But something very different here. The body doesn't like to be forced. So, that neck cracking, this is it, Beth. The most basic scene of health is sympathetic and parasympathetic. You're either resting and recuperating or fight or flight. And when the chiropractor gets me on the table, rolls me into a pretzel and says, relax, 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 I want to punch that guy and run off the table. Okay? So the osteopaths, though, very subtle, and to the point where sometimes you don't think they're doing anything. I had a woman here, saw my local guy, and I said, how did it go? She said, he didn't do anything. I said, what? And I'm going to call him and yell at him, right? You didn't do anything. Work on this woman. So she called me back. She said, oh, actually, I talked to him, and he did work on me. I didn't realize it. He said, when you were on the table and I was doing those things and holding you, that was a treatment. And she said, oh, now here's the funny thing. Then she, later that afternoon, had to take a nap because she was tired. And she slept for 10 hours. All right. This is the result of a treatment. She went into this full parasympathetic. And even though the person did nothing, she slept for 10 hours, and the next day she was sore. But he did nothing. So these are very subtle treatments, right? Very subtle and can be very profound. My guy, the first guy that we saw, I have seen this guy fix people's eyesight as a side effect. We had a guy that had a 30-year shoulder issue, and my guy worked with him, and it was so funny. Same thing. 20 minutes later, my guy says, okay, you're done. And the client says, you didn't work on me. And he says, look in the mirror. And he looks in the mirror, and his shoulders are straight. He's like, my shoulders have been straight 30 years. You did nothing, and I'm better. It's different. And the guy's just in shock, and he's leaving. And my osteopath friend says, oh, he said, when you were in the waiting room, you were reading that pamphlet over there. Can you pick it up and look at it again? And the guy puts on his reading glasses, and he can't read it until he takes off his reading glasses. 20 minutes this guy worked on, fixed his 30-year arm issue, and he didn't need glasses. All right? It's not going to happen to everybody, people, so don't get too excited. But this is the thing. When we do the right things, it's crazy what can happen. This body that we have is amazing. It's awesome. We need to support it. When we learn how to support it, this is when we take charge of our healthcare. And no one's perfect. We're all going to go through our stuff. We need the mechanic to help align things, take pressure off things. We need to get our energy to move. We need to have the emotional tools and believe we can be in a better spot. So osteopaths, for us, support them, find them if you can. We don't want them to disappear. They're very interesting, unique people. The weirder, the better. But yeah, it's an interesting one, Beth. And I appreciate you going to a couple different ones and having an interesting, something that you noticed and something that you didn't notice. For us, we're always going to look at the blood, and often we'll see the blood change. The person doesn't feel anything yet is one thing. But what we tell people is this: small change in a biological system affects the greater whole. So if we can change your blood, we can change you. But the reality still is, I can tell you your blood looks better all day. If you don't feel better, what's the point? Right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, if you can't notice that change yourself, then I don't want to make fun of the guy, but he's like, oh, now we cleaned out the wound, and now I'm dressing it, and he's getting, and it's like, nah. It literally made no difference in the thing that I was there for. And then I saw the chiropractor for the next almost year, same thing. No, like maybe some benefits to other parts of my body that I was aware of, but absolutely zero change. And then in one osteopath, I did notice a change. In one, this other osteopath, even though the first one is reputed to be the man, and you have to wait to see him and all of that kind of thing. And I'm okay, well, it just isn't
not the man for you.
And it brings me to an example you made on stage at Anarchapulco when they punctured somebody's arm and started dripping water while he couldn't see that it wasn't blood, and he died.
Yeah.
And so I'm often asking people to put their hand up and say, are you among the 20% of people in the world that cannot be hypnotized? And then so we should be friends, because that's my favorite. And so there's people in my world right now that are going, oh, well, it's just a matter of belief. If you said it too, if you don't believe that you can heal, you won't. And if you do believe, that you can heal, you are more likely to, maybe not that you will, but you're more likely.
Yes.
And this is not true of everybody, because there have been things that I had zero belief in. I did them for other reasons, not because I thought it was going to help me.
Mhm.
And it helped me immeasurably.
Right.
And then there's other things where it's like it's all making sense, and I believe in it, and I believe in that person and their ability, and there's no result, right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that might be able to more believe themselves into good health, but they're not, because people are sick. This is rare, right?
Yes.
This is rare. That maybe there could be a person, I've got somebody in mind, and maybe they are going to live to 150, and maybe they're going to drop dead of liver failure too, because there's some signs of that. But is their belief strong enough, which is, to me, the child archetype? It's no slouch just because it's the child.
Right.
And is it powerful enough to overcome matter? So this is another conclusion, that spirit and the force of life itself, not the form, but the force, is more powerful than matter.
Yes, and I believe this without question. Okay, the mind is a powerful thing. My dad would say it does not imagine disease, it creates it. Okay, and there's definitely a fine line with some of this. You have to believe. Okay, even with someone with the osteopath, like I tell people, when we look at the blood and that's where they need to head towards, I'll set them up for the experience. You're going to go in, and this weird person's going to just put their hands on your head and sit there and do nothing for a bit. And what you're going to do is lie on the table and say, this is great. This is what my body wants. I'm listening to my body and I'm here. You're not going to sit there and go, this is stupid. Because if you're saying this is stupid, it's not going to help as much. But there's still a fine line, which is interesting, because Louise Hay was a patient of my dad's when she was living in her car, okay, before she was who she was. And my dad taught her about emotions and how they affect our health, which is interesting. She created a whole empire. And she wanted to publish Dad's books, but her people would not let her because we were too controversial, which is fine. But it was funny. At one point, there was a conversation with Dad and Louise, and Dad said, I have a word for people who think they can just pray their cancer away. I call them corpses. And Dad had this weird sense of humor. She got it. But the reality is, when the person comes and this is growing out of your neck, I don't know if you can just pray that away. Okay, sometimes you need, and this is what he did with the Doctor's Manual from the Germs book, and what he did with cancer. He worked with Western medicine a little bit to do certain things while he supported the body naturally. Sometimes you got to cut something out, but the power of the mind is awesome. Definitely the placebo effect. This is the thing with some of these devices and stuff. Well, this cured my friend. Okay, great. I don't know that I believe that it cured your friend. I kind of want to see certain things, but I don't want to burst anyone's bubble. You know what I mean? There's a lot of interesting things out there that people have gotten cures from. And listen, people, was it the thing or was it you? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, like I'll put the people, placebos do not work on me. It's got to be like real in my world. It's got to be real.
Well, the placebo is one thing. The placebo effect is a different thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. The placebo effect doesn't work on me. And I won't get too argumentative, but just a little bit about the power of the mind, that I don't think the mind has any power at all. It's the source that gives the mind power.
Okay.
And so what would be a good way to, first of all, how do people begin with this work with you if they want to explore it?
Good question. Josh and I are doing what we can to teach the concept, the theory, the philosophy. For a long time, we told people we don't teach this microscope work. We are teaching some microscope work, but if you want to learn from us, you got to take one of our 13-week courses first, and we have to know you, and then we'll think about whether or not we're going to teach you the basics of this, because we've seen the irresponsibility of what people have done over the last few years with these tools. Right? But Josh and I,
you and your brother then are the only ones with the skills.
Right now, yes.
Right.
Yes.
And if both of you died, what would you do?
We would die. we would decompose and go into the earth and pleomorphism. What would we do? That would be that. It's this is the thing. My dad, when he left, it was his time. right? I don't believe in coincidences. And the way it went down, Josh and I were moving to Spain. We came back for a very short period to move out of our house quickly, visit the parents, and leave. And as we went to visit my parents, my dad was taken to the hospital. Right? If it happened a week before, we would have been moving out of the house. A week after, we would have been in Spain. And the reality was, my dad did what he needed to do, and he was allowed to leave at this point. Right? So then it's Josh and I. It's our time, our turn to share this work, so it doesn't die with him. We do want to teach people. Over the last 4 years, we've gotten really frustrated with the microscope community in totality. So what we do is we teach you. We teach any time we do a consultation, it's an educational consultation. So you can get a consultation is one thing. Read Dad's books. The holographic blood book is awesome. You'll never think the same again. The Doctors More Harmful Than Germs book is awesome. He's got some case studies in the back of that, so you can see patterns, right? Josh and I have a School of Health. We do 2 webinars a month, one guest interview topic webinar, one just Q&A. We do 2 different courses, one based on each of my dad's books. And with the Introduction to Terrain course is my dad's holographic blood course, 13 weeks. I followed my dad around with a camera and got him to talk about every section of this book. So my dad is teaching now more than ever. We have hours of him talking about this stuff.
Nice.
I have webinars, and I'm on with people from around the world. It's awesome. Bearlando comes to our webinars and hangs out with us, which is great. So we're teaching with the online courses, where the books are awesome. We teach with the consultations. We teach with our School of Health. And we have the retreats and the Life Reset program that we can do as well. For people listening, type the name up, get one of Dad's books. The School of Health, any question is appropriate. This is our way of being accessible to people.
Beautiful. That's amazing.
Thank you for asking that.
You are welcome. And I'm going to put the website up so that people can see more clearly, and you can scroll back in the chat.
And we do have, my girlfriend and I, we have the Living University of Terrain. If you go to universityofterrain.com, majority of the courses are in Spanish right now. I think we have 26 different teachers, 1,500 students from around the world.
Wow.
And she's in process of getting the university recognized in Mexico. So at some point we'll do something where you can get a certificate of terrain that will be recognized here at least. But we're really doing whatever we can to put information out there accessibly for people to share this stuff and to have the conversations with people.
Nice. And then if somebody's really lucky, you might mentor them and they could continue the work on too.
Yes. That's, where people are coming to us, which is nice, especially with the pandemic. We're getting a lot of interest. We're very picky about who we work with, and you've seen this too. We have an interesting community. Our community has been divided and conquered historically, as now as we're regrouping, there are people that are almost aligned. This is where I say, for us, it's difficult. When we work with people with terrain and they're doing antifungals, antibacterials, antiparasitics, it's not how the terrain works. So, there are terrain people that don't like us. We're easy at this point. We work with things that we have seen over decades be effective, and we're anxious and curious and excited about learning about new things that we can share with people so they can work with their own stuff without injecting, scars and invading the body. So we're really looking to learn more and to get together with people to explore things together.
Beautiful. That's amazing. Good. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been maybe a little workout. I had all the questions.
Awesome. I appreciate the questions, Beth. With Josh and I, we've been on a lot of different podcast interviews. Sometimes people say one thing, and if it's Josh and I, we'll just run. We just go. We're like the little wind-up, Energizer bunny. We just go and go. And some people have some good questions, and they have a little understanding of what we're about. And they give us a little guidance throughout the interview. So I appreciate you knowing a little bit and giving some guidance and asking some different questions. That's nice.
There you go. I consider myself a professional question asker.
I support that. I support that. Well, yeah, thank you. And for all you guys listening, like I said, I don't know everything. I'm interested in learning more. Right now, with what we do have the tools that we need to do what we need to do, which is great. We're not necessarily looking for we're not looking for anything that cures everything, because we don't believe there's anything that cures everything. But we're looking for similar things to do what we need to do. So that, like the scar treatment, where we're experimenting with sound, we're experimenting with lasers. If we can do that and teach you guys, so you don't have to go to the doctor and inject people, then that's a good thing. So we're really, it's funny too, Beth. You know, people come to us to test all kinds of stuff, and we stopped doing it because we got tired of bursting people's bubbles. You know, so there are interesting things out there. Anna is the electrical device woman. She's, you know, the PhD in biomedicine, the electrical engineer. So we want to test things. We want to just find out what we can to share with people, so you guys can have the tools you need to do what you got to do.
That's awesome. Very nice. And I'm sorry, Debbie, I guess I did miss your questions. I apologize. Do you want to take one last question if Debbie wants? Oh, let me see.
Yeah, sure.
Let me see if I can find it now.
I love talking about this, you know, and I don't get to talk about it as much as you would think. As much as I'm on podcasts, I don't. My friends, you know, other family members. So I'm thrilled.
I think I found it. So what would you do with the info you got from my blood if there's no expert to heal me?
You have to find the expert. This is part of the journey. This is an interesting one, Debbie, because I had someone recently, you know, she said, the closest osteopath is like 7 hours away. And what if it doesn't do the job? I got to find somebody else. My response was, or you could sit there and do nothing and be in the same spot. You know,
right? Kind of, yeah.
It's part, and sometimes, Debbie, this is the journey. This is you. Are you willing to do what you need to do to be where you need to be? And I'll tell you this one. This is funny. There was a woman. She said the same thing. Person's 10 hours away. I said, well, do nothing, and you'll be in the same spot. And she finally said, okay, I'm going to go. I said, if it's my health, I'm going to do whatever I can to be the best I can. She called the osteopath a few months after that, and she said, I'm ready to make the appointment. The osteopath said, I'm sorry, I've moved. And you know where she moved? 10 minutes away from that woman.
Next door. There you go.
I get chills with this.
Wow,
right?
Wow. Yeah.
Yes. But we'll help you. We'll do our best to help you find the right people. You know, they are out there. We need to find them, and we need to support them.
Right. Yeah, I almost didn't go see this person because I know how she feels about this and that. And then I thought, you know what? I have the memory that she has the smartest hands I've ever met in my entire life so far. And that was like, I don't know, 30 years ago when I had one massage from her, but my body remembered she had smart hands.
Cool.
And then, so yeah, I was very happy. I didn't let my politics and my views stop. I don't even like that word politics, but yeah. So Debbie, thanks you for that. I'm glad you let me know.
Yeah. And no one's 1,000% aligned. You know what I mean? So we got to do what we got to do.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And Rose, nice to see you. That you're saying you should do a test with remote viewing psychics and see if their visions corroborate the holographic blood images.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Anna's kids read with the blindfolds on. We can test with them.
Right. I'm hearing about these children. That's amazing. Yeah. It's. Do you know who Jacob Lieberman is? He's a doctor.
I know the name.
Yeah. He wrote Luminous Life, and he healed his sight, but his eyes were still damaged. Yeah. But he healed his sight.
I believe these unbelievable things, Beth, because we've seen these things happen.
Yeah. There you go.
Believe the unbelievable, guys. It makes life much more wonderful when you have the wonder there.
Right. There you go.
Cool.
Nice. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for joining, Adam. I really appreciate it. And I'll get a chance to talk to you in another week, 10 days or so.
Cool. My pleasure. I appreciate you helping me to generate the awareness. And for you guys listening, you know, my brother and I, we could use all the help we can get with sharing the information. So feel free to share this stuff because we are not good marketers. Right? Cool.
You're pretty good. You keep showing up in my feed over and over. So you're doing well.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Something's going right. Thank you. Yes. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's awesome. All right. Well, have a beautiful rest of your day. I'm going to just let people know that if you wanted to follow up with any of the work that I do to help people on the mental, emotional, spiritual detox path, that is very parallel to the physical detox path, but has some differences in that it's not as intense and dangerous in the same way when you bring up the things that you didn't expect to find in yourself, and nothing can harm you at that level, then you could start with my work and do I was sure I had a link here. Yeah, you could start with my work and do a King Hero archetype quiz just to get a little sign of where you might be stuck. Like Adam is talking about, where a blockage might not be the only blockage by any stretch, but it can be one where you can begin working right away, because the problem otherwise is, like you said, do nothing, and it is, where is it headed? You can always see it's going to fall apart. So that's a good place to start. My book is also a good illustration of how I used the hero's journey without knowing it, right? I was completely blind. It's only unpacking it and writing about it 20 years later that it made a lot more sense. But so you can find out more about my work and take part. If you're tuning in and you're part of the Love Your Liver paradigm, I am giving a talk on April 25th, and that's something that you all probably know by now. I'm up to my eyeballs involved in, and getting a lot of goodness out. And I hope to marry you and Garrett, if there's any possible marriage there. So I think that's it for now. Thank you, everyone. Thanks again, Adam, for making the time. I know your hands are full. Like you said, you're a juggler.
A little bit of a circus clown.
Better than a circus clown. And I'm going to play us out with another piece by my son. So have a beautiful rest of your day, everyone. Lots of love, and bye for now.
Hasta luego.